Hello, Justin.
Hello.
Thanks for your time. So we would love to hear a bit more from your experience at Plymouth Council and why PEC, Plymouth Energy Community, was created.
Yeah. So really the idea or the driving force behind Plymouth Energy Community came from through an election. So it was elected councillors who came with a programme to energise social enterprise in the city and cooperatives, and one of the specific cooperatives that they wanted to set up through that was Plymouth Energy Community. That came alongside a recognition from both the council but also from a lot of people within the community that there were a number of issues around energy that were not being met at the moment. So part of that was environmentally and making sure that there was enough sustainable energy, enough renewable energy projects going on in the city. Part of that was around local ownership and making sure that we have a system in the UK where all of our energy, or most of our large energy companies are owned certainly as national firms, often as international firms, and residents in Plymouth are spending an awful lot of money on energy which is flowing outside of the city and outside of the country in some cases, and that actually by increasing the local ownership and control over those resources and that infrastructure, that would have positive benefits. And then lastly, that fuel poverty is a massive issue in the city. There's about 12% of the city, and in some streets about a third of homes or more, which suffer with fuel poverty and having to make those decisions about heating and eating in a given day. So the driving force for Plymouth Energy Community was to try and tackle those issues, to give some local ownership around that.
Thank you. And what is the relationship between Plymouth Energy Community, PEC, and the City Council, and why does this work so effectively? What are the benefits of that?
So I think the early drive, one of the real successes of the council's approach is that they wanted to drive this local ownership model, but they were willing to accept to not necessarily be able to control it completely. So there was a really strong offer, I think initially, of support to resource some officers at the council to go out to the community, to talk to them about the prospect of a community-owned organisation, to get 100 people involved, founder members who wanted to do something in this space, and then to support them around business plans and around the technical knowledge needed to start to make decisions about what Plymouth Energy Community would be doing. And it grew from there really, and there remains a councillor on the board. So whoever at the City Council is responsible for the environment sits on the board of Plymouth Energy Community as part of that role. But then we have a range of board members who are elected by the membership, and a few co-opted board members where we think there's specific skills that we need from certain people. So the council remain involved, but they have really supported and nurtured something that now exists independently of the council. Alongside that, part of that support package was initially some officer time provided for free from the council, but over the years that officer time is reduced, and last year was the first year where, I think it's last year was the first year, but certainly right now Plymouth City Council offers no subsidy to Plymouth Energy Community. Plymouth Energy Community pays for all the officer time that it buys, but our staffing is still provided by the City Council. So PEC have a service level agreement to buy for some of our staff 100% of their time, and Plymouth Energy Community pays the wages, but also the pension. The pensions are all local government pensions, so it's a good job for people that work for Plymouth Energy Community. It's got good terms, and we also pay for the overheads to house ourselves. And I know a lot of small organisations struggle with managing an office space, and lots and lots of involvement around HR and financing that takes up a lot of time and a lot of resource in a small organisation, and so there's actually part of that package of support as well from the council is although we pay a fair rate for that, it is provided, and it's easier that it is provided than otherwise. So there's that what initially began as an offer of support in terms of time and expertise from the council. That bit's withdrawn now. That doesn't need to be there anymore. That was nurtured for a few years. There's still that close working relationship and that ability to benefit from council resources and facilities, as long as it's paid for fairly, that still exists there. And that's kind of created this unit of people where in terms of the low carbon team at the Plymouth City Council, that we kind of refer to that as made up as part of Plymouth City Council employees working in the low carbon team. Part of it is Plymouth Energy Community employees, and you get that combination of two different expertises sitting in the same zone, which has all sorts of benefits as well.
Great. And what's the room for manoeuvring as this independence can give some more space to experiment and be more radical for PEC than when it would be done completely within the City Council?
Yeah, there's an awful lot more freedom in that way. A lot of the work we do is working with individuals in their home and trying to find solutions to them in their home, and that can be more difficult just anyway as a council. But also you're quite often working with quite minor problems that people might have in their home that they need, fixing, and some of the procurement rules around being a council, and how do you go into somebody's home and they need a plumber to do some piece of work, and if you have to stand back and say, well, there's a range of plumbers you can find online or through this list somewhere online, and you're doing nothing to help somebody really. And actually, as Plymouth Energy Community, we have over the years grown really good relationships with local contractors, local plumbers, that we are really confident about the work they do. They've got the right accreditation. The ability to, when we're giving advice to a householder, to actually be operating within their community, to be a part of their community that involves the other businesses that involve in their community, and be able to talk confidently about our role in that community is really strong, I think. Also to bring people alongside in a meaningful way, to be able to talk to people about their ability to directly influence the work that we do in Plymouth Energy Community. Huge number of our members, so we have about 500 members currently, or 500 supporters and about 80 members. There's a couple of different classifications in there. Huge number of those are people that we visited and given fuel poverty support to, and have gone on then to run other programmes like our mPOWER programme, which is about getting people from our community involved and feeling like they have an ability to drive what PEC does, and take their own skills and do what they want to do to contribute to their community. That is a very community-based approach. That ability to relinquish that control in terms of the council and be able to operate without going up to higher structures and saying this is a project proposal that we want to do, that this is why we want to do it, and justify that and justify some investment in it, and actually to be able to operate much more freely can be extremely useful, particularly at doing things in that community level. Whereas if you wanted to do something at a city-wide level, a huge retrofit programme, or go in and tackle 3,000 homes and get them insulated, at that point it might be that a council level is a much better scale to operate. And the other area that can be really helpful is in terms of just fundraising. So certainly the original business model of PEC was that by taking community investment from shares from people within our community and using that to invest in renewable resources in the city, so solar panels on roofs of schools and other community buildings, and a solar array on a field a field that would be not usable for anything else, that you can actually earn revenue from that, and that revenue can start to support the work that we're doing around fuel poverty. So actually there's just a very simple investment and an ability to act more nimbly as an enterprise really, but an enterprise with a social focus. That, due to different subsidies, that business model hasn't been fully realised yet. There is some money coming back from those installations, but it'll take another few years for that to be a kind of meaningful amount for that sort of work. But as a prospect, there are other things we're looking at now in terms of what are the resources we can own, where can we take local ownership of the infrastructure that people need, deliver that better, while also creating that revenue that means that we can deliver better support to people as well.
Wow. So, and what have been the results so far of PEC? and yeah, what have been the benefits for the residents in terms of the wider community of Plymouth?
So some, hard statistical results of about 5 megawatts of renewable energy in the city that wasn't there previously, that is community owned, about £2.5 million worth of community shares that have been bought. Those are people who've invested in a positive project in their area, and are now receiving 6% rate of return for their investment, but also have engaged with that idea around community energy and are aware of the work that we're doing around fuel poverty as well, and so it's kind of brought the community together a bit more. That fuel poverty work, we've helped, I think, off the top of my head I can't remember exactly, in the region of 13,000 people we've helped with support since their creation. More recently we've finished a project delivering visits for 1,000 households in some of the poorer areas of our cities, and offering those households advice as well as measures that they can fit in their home, like LED lighting, draft proofing, new heating controls. So the impact of those visits alone, the 1,000 visits in those households over the lifetime of the measures and the interventions that we've done, will be about £4.5 million back in the pockets of households we visited through that. And that's the kind of hard measures. There's ambitions to go on from there and look at housing. We've got a site where we're looking to build 37 affordable housing units, and for social rent. But there's some softer bits around there as well, in terms of Plymouth has a history of being a city where it hasn't always been the most aspirational city. It hasn't always been the most kind of self-driving city. And I think Plymouth Energy Community sits within a wider social enterprise movement that has changed that image a lot. You see areas of the city which are really regenerating themselves without much outside involvement, that are coming together. Even the very poorest areas of the city are doing this, and I think PEC is part of that story, in terms of that a lot of those households who are now our members, who we may have visited at a time where they felt extremely powerless, and we're visiting obviously because they can't afford their energy bills, but that's usually the tip of an iceberg of the reason why we're visiting somebody, and the situation they're in. And I think a lot of what poverty means really to people is powerlessness, and that's the real impact of them. And part of what we're doing is saying, okay, we can come and help you with that situation in the short term, but in the long term there's actually opportunities for you to get involved in continuing to do the things that we do, to get involved with some of the volunteering programs that we have that will give something different to do, a different experience, new skills, and we've seen a lot of people who've gone from that position to employment, but also just doing more and more things in their community. And I think there is a difference there in delivering a project as a social enterprise, or then either as a local authority, or sometimes even as a charity, in terms of a charitable approach can be very much, we're going to come in and do something to you to make your situation better. A local authority is often quite controlled. So we're through there, Tim. I'm doing a quick interview for a video. I'll come through. Yeah, a local authority can be very kind of target driven, go out and do it. And I think there's something about a social enterprise, and I've worked in both in charity in particular for quite a long time. There's something about a social enterprise where it can be a bit more creative about its solutions. It can be a bit more, a bit less specific about how it's going to help people, and we have invented all sorts of things like a curtain bank in the city, because we just saw a lot of homes where people moving into new homes, there's no curtains in there, and that's an issue for energy poverty. It's also an issue for human dignity, really, and homes that can't really afford to buy those curtains. And we know there's lots of people in our community, we have access to them, we have communication with them because we have a mailing list of people on our membership, and we have our links with the council, so we can go out and say, if you have old curtains, bring them to us, we'll repurpose them. And it's quite a practical, it doesn't take an awful lot of time, but it's kind of practical community approach to it.
Right. Maybe to end with, what would be your message for municipalities that are eager to take on this approach, and what would be the first thing that they should be exploring?
I think I'd start to look at and nurture the ambition in your city and understand, I think, who the key people are involved in that. I think that nurturing that ambition is it's good to have general community involvement and good general community support and get a sense of it, which is very democratic of the community. But realistically, things won't happen unless you have some really key individuals who can really drive that forward and really understand it. So I think beginning as a local authority to understand who's out there already trying to do things in the community and support what they're doing. Now, there's the ability as well then to resource what they're doing and to contribute your officer time and your council support and have an open conversation with them about how to take that forward. It might be that there isn't an organisation out there in your community that's delivering that kind of work already, but there are people who would like to, and that's the situation in PEC really. But I think it does start with the people who might be involved and having an open mind to how their aspiration can be realised without necessarily needing to be them running away with your money and doing something that you don't want them to do. But I think that community leading with you providing some of the structure around, okay, but what's going to be effective here? With not thinking what can a council do, but what is going to be effective here, and who's the best person to deliver that, and going from there, I think is probably the most powerful bit.
Wow, thanks so much, Justin. This was great.